We're literally straight after the men's pro race here in Chattanooga at the Ironman 70.3 Worlds, and I'm delighted to say I've got Tyler Butterfield, who finished 7th today, and his bike. Now, Tyler, thanks for joining us. I'd love it if you could chat us through your bike here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Heather. I've been riding Cervélo for a few years now. I got with him before the London Olympics, and because I'm a bad swimmer, I actually had the fastest bike split there on their S5. I've chosen to ride the P5. I was on the P5X for a while, and I rode Ironman Texas earlier this year, which qualified me for Kona. I really like the P5X. Flat, fast courses, I would definitely use that. And for training, I love the disc brakes. But for a course like Chattanooga with the hills, I prefer a bit of a lighter bike. I'm quite a heavy rider myself, as some people are. I've gotten this bike down to 17.5 pounds, which for a time trial bike isn't bad, with a Powermeter, a disc, and a deep dish front wheel. So I'll run you through it.
Yeah, run us through it.
So the bars are pretty far extended. I've got my SRM taped on. That's again just saving weight. Like, I literally am one of the biggest weight weenies. I tape my gels on here. I got the double bottle cage.
This is unique. We'll come back to this in a minute. You carry on.
Well, I did test it in the wind tunnel, and for me it was the fastest. And on this bike, it's the fastest. You don't want a bottle down here. An aero bottle cage you can do, but I know this is fast in the wind tunnel for my position. I've modified the front end a little, and I have changed this from race day, because I did it so I can show you. To get it down to this weight, I have actually used Cane Creek brakes underneath, and they're also cable brakes. And that's unique. I've used this bike. I've gotten a 9th, an 8th, and now a 7th at 70.3 Worlds, and a 7th and a 5th in Kona, all on this bike. I use the Magura brakes for all but today. I've chosen to go with the cable just because I like the adjustability.
Okay.
I have a lot of different size training wheels, and it's just to make the bike lighter. That's why I went with that. It's probably not quite as air as it should be. That's why I have the Magura thing taped on. I have titanium bolts on here as well.
Gosh.
Titanium Speedplay pedals. They're a little narrower, which some people don't like, and that's why some people stay with the steel, which are wider. SRM, that's a little heavier, but I love my power. Sram eTAP, which is super cool because the batteries are interchangeable, but it's also really light, which is why I went with that. I don't run the gels here because just more bolts, more equipment. I did go with a 30 Cassette today. The hill has some steep parts in it. And here's the Cermaicspeed, which is only supposed to go to a 28, but with the Sram eTAP, it actually works quite well with a 30. I had no problems going all the way up here. My Comete disc, my tires, I either use the Mavic or these Corsa, Vittoria. Mavic comes, and they're a great sponsor of mine. But for Worlds, I like the white wall just for the looks.
What width are you riding?
I'm still running a 23 because of the narrow disc.
Yeah. And
this Mavic CXR is super fast in the wind tunnel. Before I signed with them, there is actually a clip that goes on that makes it flush. Wow. That clips on and makes it super aero, which is what makes these wheels pretty much the most aero front wheel on the market. I'm super happy with it. I even use the Mavic shoes. These are their road shoes, but I just use the zipper. Again, for aerodynamics. Ekoi helmet is the short one, but they got a longer one coming out, which I'm excited to use in Kona. I know my threshold, I know my limit, and my numbers are not as high as Keenly. And so I need to maximize the bike. I need the bike to be as fast as it can be to help me. You can only push as hard as you can push. I'll run you through some of the numbers, and you'll see that the men's race is quite dynamic. And then this is the pit stop, that if I do get a flat, that's how I'm fixing it. There is often neutral service for the pros, but you can't be complacent.
Yeah.
It's worth taking. I want to finish. I still have Kona in 5 weeks. I also got super light skewers on here. And yeah, that's how I round the bike out to get it down to 17.5 pounds.
Earlier you were just talking about this is quite a stretched out position that you're in on the bike. What's your reasoning behind that? We've seen some of the guys, riding much more upright and in front of their face with their bars.
Yeah, so I've used the high riser here. I noticed a lot of the cyclists have done it. They ride the P5 on dimension data. By coming up, I had to go out. If I just came up, I would have been more aero. By going out, you're shortening this distance. So that's the pocket, which is why everyone ducks their head.
Okay.
It's pretty hard. You can shrug your shoulders, which basically front on view, they tell you to do this. But it's pretty hard to shorten that. That's a bone. But if you suddenly go out, from that elbow to this shoulder is a shorter distance.
Yeah.
So by going out, that pushes you out.
Does that use more core?
You do. You notice the first time you do it, especially if you surge on the bike, because you're pulling on your bars. But by being further out, you're shortening that.
Yeah, of course.
So it tests pretty well. It comes out pretty aero for me. Everyone's slightly different, but it's been working well.
Just to quickly talk about your setup here, because we were looking at the bikes earlier in transition and nobody else had the double bottle setup. It's unique to you.
Well, there's one or two that do it. Tim O'Donnell does it in Kona. He's done it, and he tested it and he said to me, man, that comes out fast. And Jesse Thomas does it. He runs a third one under here. So I just like it for a few reasons. One, all my nutrition is in front of me. I can see if I use one water, one sports drink. I use both sports drink. So these I also do for safety. Because I like this nutrition, this locks it on and I use the front one mainly. We had a couple of rough sections on the course. It doesn't look super pro, but it's just an elastic lace from my running shoes.
It's pretty tight, yeah.
That's pretty tight, yeah.
But are you, because obviously to drink, you'll have to take it out and sit up as opposed to being able to stay in your aero position with a straw. How are you?
Everything's done, so literally, that I'll leave off for the most part, but literally
you're staying in your aero position and you can do it from there.
And that's also the reason to not do one behind your seat.
Because you've got to sit up,
Most people to get behind their seat, if they stay on their bars, start wiggling, but most people have to reach back far enough, they have to get off. Everything's in front of me, I never have to get off. To be honest, I only stood up probably 4 times the whole ride. The whole main climb I stayed seated. As a bigger guy, your heart rate's lower. It's not a power punchy climb that you could stand up and just sprint over. Some of the short course athletes probably did stand up, but that's their preference of using different muscle groups. Yeah. For me as a larger athlete, that's why I chose to run. I run a 42 small chainring, 55 big chainring. So the 55-11 is for after you've climbed, but the 42, I needed the 30. I was in the 30 for a lot of that. My average cadence, I think, was 96. So I keep pretty high cadence.
Yeah.
I use
just
one.
So you, purely for the aero, so you can stay in that position.
Yeah, and just run the cadence, stay in the position, and I'm just dividing the power by more slices, the higher the cadence. I run 1725 crank length.
Okay.
I went down to 167 last year.
Oh, quite a difference.
Yeah, and I upped my cadence even more for that. But I found this is the optimal for me.
So tell us about your Cermaicspeed jockey wheels then. Why have you gone for Cermaicspeed?
So I use Cermaicspeed because the jockey wheels are larger, and so that the chain bends less, which is why it creates less friction. I also have a Cermaicspeed chain. Cermaicspeed in both my wheel bearings and in the bottom bracket. Here I'll show you a cool little demo. And I don't have a moto in this, but as you can see, there's not the resistance of this in my wheel is more than the friction from my bottom bracket, my chain, and like if you touch any of these, you'll stop it. So if you have resistance anywhere, it'll stop it. But the freewheel, the resistance of the freewheel is more than the resistance of my drivetrain.
Got you.
And it's all just a few watts here and there, and it's not free watts. We don't save watts or put less watts. You put the same watts and you go slightly faster.
Yeah. Whilst you're there, just give us the free hub sound.
The free hub sound. So that proves there's no engine in there. Because I've walked my bike into transition and someone said, "Hey, you got a motor in there." I said, "No." It's just maximizing what your legs can do.
So yeah, I know you're king of custom. What's this grip agent you've got going on your handlebars?
Yeah, the grip here, this is actually sandpaper. It's like sticky sandpaper for steps.
Yeah.
Which is why it has the little yellow fluoro stuff I think it's like warning. But it's similar to skateboard.
Yeah. Yeah, where you put your feet on.
Yeah, the grip there. I don't train with it because it sort of rips your hands apart, but on a race you're never down here much, and it's super grippy, so I never slip.
Yeah.
I just wrap tape around it for training and then take it back off because it will rip your gloves apart. It picks the stitching.
Wow.
But again, for racing, it keeps it super clean and aero, and it's just simple. I mean, I have pretty aero brakes, so it matches. I'm a big believer on when like working back.
You want all important at this end.
Well, and everything that, if you make something aero, what's behind it needs to be aero. And these are such nice bars that I just try and keep them clean.
Yep.
I don't know with that. In the wind tunnel, I didn't have time or the budget to test everything. I tested bigger stuff like bottles, shoes, helmet, wheels, stuff like that. It just makes sense to just keep it smooth and clean.
If you had to like choose between one and the other, is weight more important to you or aero?
They're both very important. And it depends what you're...
I guess on the course.
Well, but I mean, like I wouldn't use a road bike.
Yeah.
There's lighter wheels in these. I'm using an 80 front wheel and a disc. It's not the lightest setup. Mavic makes some super light wheels. The Mavic Ultimates would have this bike down another pound at least. There's a give and a take.
Yeah.
And just the way the men's race has these surges is why I care about the weight. I did debate on this course using a shallower, like a 40, but in the end I went with this wheel. I like it. I've used it for a lot of races, and I think you guys are going to take a video clip of some of the watts.
Yeah. So you're talking about the surges. Well,
yeah, and
tell us.
Well,
We've just been having a look
through it. So to get through it. So the average was just above 300 with a cadence of around 96.
Was that your target?
I don't really have a target, but that is good for me.
Okay.
My SRM seems to run a lot lower than a lot of other people's. But the interesting thing that I pay more attention to is the zones I'm in. So I've just zoned mine 0, 100, 100, 200, 200, 300.
Yeah.
So from 0 to 100 was 8 minutes at 40 watts average, and that's just the ride home.
Okay.
Then there was 13 minutes at 150. That's basically freewheeling, but only 13 minutes. There's almost 40 minutes at 256 average watts. That's when you're sort of just in the bunch, sort of minding yourself, making sure you don't go too close.
Okay.
Up a hill, you might have to ease back a bit.
Yeah.
That's not hard for most of the pros, but it's. I mean, you're putting power, but it's not. It's nothing hard.
Yeah.
Then I gotta flick back through. The next one is 50 minutes at 342 watts. So then that's when
quite punchy,
you're pushing power there.
Yeah.
And that's above my threshold. So I'm above my threshold for 50 minutes. And then
what's the longest you would stay at that, like in that zone
in
for?
In that zone, I could stay there for a couple minutes, 5, 10, you know what I mean, at a time, and then I need to dip under.
Okay.
Because in that, I then have 16 minutes where between above 400, and that's at an average of 453. And the interesting thing as well is you can see the cadence changing. I'm at 55 cadence at my lowest one, then 88, then 98, then 95 at the 300, and then 101. So when I'm above 400 is when I have my highest cadence, which is how you want it, like most of the cyclists tell you. But I mean, 16 minutes at an average of 450 watts. I mean, that's a cumulative. That's not a straight.
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah.
But when people say that, and my max.
And go on, tell us your max. Yeah.
Yeah, the max here is 835 and 128 cadence. So the 128 cadence would be spinning down a hill. And I probably wouldn't have hit an 800 then. I would have hit probably more like 6. That would have been like at the bottom of a hill,
just getting
a spike.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love the numbers. I keep it simple. I don't actually put my own numbers in.
Yeah.
Because when you use your thresholds and stuff, they actually change. I know what my threshold is, but I want to know each zone, every race, what it compares to. And I have data from other worlds and from Kona. And it's super important, like the data from Kona when I train for Kona and for this race. I could pick courses and go out. 2 weeks ago I did a simulation race to match today, and my kilojoules were less today than they were in my training ride. The average watts were slightly higher, but the time in the max powers and everything was similar.
Tyler, thanks so much for your time, especially straight after your race. I'm impressed that you're still standing. If you do want to subscribe to GTN, just click on the globe, and to watch a video on pro bike tech, click down here.
Thanks for having me, and if you want to watch a video on 5 essential bike tips, click here.